Hey guys, welcome back to the studio for another lesson. This week, we're going to be starting an exploration into how we can use the humble triad in our improvisations. To start things off, I'll show you guys how I like to play and practice major and minor triads and their inversions in close position across the whole register of the guitar. We'll go through a couple of exercises to help get you comfortable with these shapes, and then I'll demonstrate the same technical work with spread triads for a more open sound. Then we'll get into some more improvisation-focused exercises where I'll show you how to use the triads in combination with each other and some bebop half-step rules so you can see how these simple shapes result in some great ideas. This one is going to be pretty heavy on the technique, so if you're ready, grab your guitar and let's get started. When we're learning to improvise, especially in the context of jazz, we tend to focus a lot of our efforts on big, extended seventh chords. This is great and all, but when you get right down to it, triads are really the building blocks of all the rich and expressive harmony we could want. If you've been hanging around at the studio for a while, you might remember that we've gone over my approach to playing triads as chords in a previous video. Our approach today is going to be pretty similar in that we're going to start by investigating how to play triads in close position, where the notes are stacked as close to one another as possible, in all inversions across the entire register of the instrument. To keep things relatively simple, let's start with C major, and I'll show you how I run that triad all the way up and down the neck. Take a look at how that works now. In that example, I started out with the triad in first inversion because I'm super interested in playing the entire register. In this tonality and chord quality, the first inversion is the absolute lowest chord I can play. Rhythmically, I went for playing triplets because I wanted you guys to get a window into how I would go about fingering these triad shapes without having to worry about doubling any of the notes. In this next example, we'll turn each of these triads into an octave chord, where we double the bass note up an octave so that we can play a continuous stream of eighth notes. Here's how that works. Before we go on to the next exercise, I want to point out that while I'm a huge advocate for sweeping and economy picking when playing this way, there's a ton to be gained by practicing all of this stuff with strict alternate picking. Now that being said, the fingerings I've chosen for all these are geared towards my approach, which is heavily centered around economy picking. Next up, let's try these same exact exercises, but change the chord quality to minor. On paper, this is a pretty simple procedure, but it's going to have a big impact on how we approach both the left and the right hand when it comes to actually playing them in a fluid and comfortable way. Here's how I'd approach playing minor triads across the whole register as eighth note triplets. See what I mean? For one, we can't start in the first inversion anymore since we don't have a low E flat. Beyond that, there's lots of choices we could make about how long to stay on a particular string group, where to make the shifts, and more. Let's see how the octave chord exercise needs to be altered in order to accommodate the change in chord quality. I bet you can already tell that this video is really only scratching the surface of how we can potentially practice this stuff. In the PDF for today's lesson, I've included a bunch more full register exercises like this in all chord qualities to help you work out these shapes. For now, let's see how we can get a little bit more juice out of the humble triad by switching from close to open style voicings. In my initial video on triads, I explained that we can open up the sound of the chords by taking the middle note of each voicing and shifting it up an octave. And what results is a chord that has wider intervals between each of the notes and thus a bigger and more open sound. We can do the same thing to really great effect when we're practicing our triads as single notes. Let's use the same exercise structure from the last section as a template and go through C major, first as triplets, across the whole register of the instrument. Here's how that works. When we do this, we have to contend with a lot more string skipping and make our choices for fingering carefully so that we can still move smoothly from one inversion to the next. We'll have to make similar adaptations when we do this as an octave chord exercise. Now, take a listen to how that sounds now. Personally, these are some of my favorite sounds to play, especially when I'm trying to get a more contrapuntal sound in my solos. The distance between the notes really helps to give the illusion that we're playing multiple melodies at one time. Now let's switch the chord quality to minor and see what kind of technical changes we'll need to make to accommodate that. Up first, here's a C minor triad in all inversions as triplets. Just like in the last section, there's a lot more going on here technically than just simply flattening the third in every chord shape. My goal is to be able to play all of these different shapes as smoothly as possible, so I'll change the way that I approach them technically to better align with that. Now let's do the same minor triad, but as an octave chord across the whole register. In the PDF for today's lesson, you'll find several more exercises to help you get comfortable with playing these kinds of shapes all over the guitar neck and in all chord qualities. Now let's move on and see how we can practice this stuff with more of an eye towards implementing them in an improvised solo. Before we get to that though, I need to give a quick shout out to TRUEFIRE.com for supporting the channel. TRUEFIRE is an online lesson library that's host to literally thousands of courses on a wide range of musical topics from some really amazing artists and educators, including yours truly. If you're interested in improving your comping, make sure to check out my course, Exploring Melodic Jazz Comping, available on TRUEFIRE now. In this course, I'll demonstrate and break down 17 essential comping approaches using TRUEFIRE's interactive learning tools. We'll work on crafting more sophisticated comping parts using drop-two voicing, chord substitutions, approach chords, diminished concepts, and voice leading. We'll also dive into triadic approaches, partial chords, using scales as chords, and the art of borrowing notes and dominants. You'll learn how these melodic comping approaches can be artistically applied using backing tracks based on the changes to popular jazz standards like Autumn Leaves, There'll Never Be Another You, and All the Things You Are. The link to the course is in the description of this video. Now let's get back to the lesson and see how we can make these triads work in a way that sounds a bit more like bebop. One of my favorite exercises to work out when I'm trying to incorporate a new shape or sound into my playing is to use it in combination with Barry Harris's rules for descending scale lines. Now, we've gone over these in the past, but if you need a refresher, make sure you go check out my videos on the major and dominant scale rules. If you're ready to keep going, let's play an exercise that goes like this. We'll combine two triads together and ascend as far as we can in one position, and then descend the scale using the rule for the note that lands on the beat. Here's how that sounds. There's lots of mileage in an exercise like this because we can not only alter the chord quality, but we can interrupt the scale run at any point with either pivots, more triads, or a litany of other bebop concepts I've taught you in the past. Let's do one more exercise before we wrap things up for today. This one will be more about making short phrases out of our close position triads. We'll play a chromatic approach into each triad and then ascend with a triplet rhythm before descending the scale and playing a short wrap-up phrase. Once you feel comfortable with these, try experimenting with them over all the different possible chord changes that they fit over. Here's the exercise for you to check out now. Thanks so much for sticking around all the way to the end of today's video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of the lesson. Like I mentioned at the start, triads are a super important building block for our playing as improvisers. And next time, we'll get into more ways that we can apply these shapes over chord changes in some ways that sound traditionally bebop, and more modern approaches like using triad pairs. As always, if you did find today's lesson helpful, make sure you give the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell for notifications too. If you want to get access to the PDF for today's lesson, you can grab that along with the whole back catalog for all the videos on the channel for as little as $10 a month over at my Patreon page, or by just hitting the join button right here on YouTube. A special thanks goes out to Ron Maestas, Alf Collins, Juan Doming, and Vince for being studio fans. I really appreciate the support. An extra special thanks is due to these studio members for their support as well: Gregory Chu, Jeffrey Ash, Vaughn Davis, Nick Hess, Louis Maiden, Brendan Kelly, Stephen Moore, Jason Crowley, T. Colston, Adam Wright, Ronan, Torino, Tom Gates, Andrew McBride, Aldo Fonseca, Nikita Sketchkov, Michael M., Jason Paul Dubois, Ron Askew, Pete Lang, Lawrence Beer, Johnny Phillips, Raymond Agloro, James Seabury, Bruce Wood, Larry G., Bill Benfield, Benjamin Dockstader, Sean Lepore, Severus Guo, Paul George, Stephen White, Salkai Zoltan, Apollos Gilbert, Justin Fisher, Milan de Kaiser, Tyler Kosarek, David Wertman, Michael LeBroy, Todd Stupnik, Zay Soares, Guy Theobald, Artie Sanchez, Louis Rosen, Stephen Prager, Aaron Walters, Skemster, Everton Armstrong, Stephen Schwartz, Max Irwin, Patrick Caron, David Zuckerbraun, and PH. An extra special shout out to Jazz Luminaire patron Bill Jacob. Thank you guys all so much for your continued support. I'm David Shore, and thanks again for hanging out with me at the studio today. I'll see you guys next time.